Huh? Yeah, we'll be... Am I on? Testing. There we go. We'll be able to go, I remember when. Right? I'll remember when. All right. We're in 2 Samuel, chapter 1. Saul is dead. Ding dong, Saul is dead. Yeah. Now, here's the great thing about the Bible. Have you ever heard of the idiom, don't kill the messenger? That's what David does. We get it from 2 Samuel chapter 1. The messenger comes and brings message to David, and what does David do? Kills him. Have you ever heard of the other one, oh, how the mighty have fallen? No? You've never heard of all? You have? Comes from 2 Samuel chapter 1. A lot of idioms we use. Is it me, or does something smell like it's burning in here? Okay, it's probably just me. It's just me. Quiet you. When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Let's look at it. We'll pick up in 17. David wrote a lament, and with this lamentation over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he said that this should be taught to the people of Judah. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. He said, your glory, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not to Gath. Publish it not in the streets of Askelon. Lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice. Lest the daughters of the uncircumcised exult. You mountains of Gilboa, let there not be dew or rain upon you, nor the fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely in life and in death, they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. You daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet, who put on ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan lies slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, O my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. By the way, that's usually where people get the idea that they were homosexuals, and we'll get into that a little bit on. It's a little bit of a reach, but that's okay. How the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war have perished. Who is Saul?
He was the bad guy.
He was the antagonist. He is a dead guy. But that doesn't, thank you for pointing that out. Again, is Saul David's buddy? Not at all.
But Saul is respected by David.
Saul is respected by David, but more than just that, think about this. This is a lament psalm that David doesn't just write and put away. Some of the versions give it a little bit more, not that it should be taught. They're going off of, using the language should. It's going off kind of a verb tense that really means this will be taught to all the people of Judah. That's strange language for a guy who spent the bulk of his adult life trying to kill you. Right? And multiple times, David could have killed Saul. One time, here he is taking a Class 2 download and could have get killed right there. If you don't know what that means, just use your imagination. Another time, he's asleep in the middle of his army. His bodyguard's asleep. Could have been impaled by a spear. And in both sides, he had guys going, do it. Come on, do it. He'd do it if it was you. And he would have done it if it was David. But look at David. David wouldn't let any of his men do it. But Saul would have done it to David and not even batted an eye. Why? Because if Saul's targeting acquisition radar was any better, he would have killed David. But it suffered from poor aim. Thi-
Still respected that he is God's anointed.
He is still respected. He is God's anointed, and recognized the position that he had. He is the first king over not all of totality of Israel, but over Israel. And because of this, he writes a lament psalm that is to be taught continually. And I honestly believe from the text there isn't a moment where David did not cease loving Saul. Saul had stopped loving David. See, it wasn't just God's fear that kept David from killing, though that was what David did. I think there was also the aspect, and when you truly love someone, you don't seek to do them harm, regardless of how much harm they're trying to do you. I think so because it pours out in this language here in 2 Samuel chapter 1. If it was just simply he respected the position, he writes this psalm, he puts it away, but he commands the children of Israel to learn this. Remember this. Let's take a look at it. We'll look at it just briefly. A lot of it is what you call couplets, and it's basically two verses that kind of have this kind of nice little hymnic kind of rhyme. Oh, the glory of the Lord is slain on your high places. And here it is. How the mighty have fallen. It's the idiom we use today. Where do we get it from? Well, now you know it comes from the death of Saul and the lament David has over Saul. It doesn't really mean to rejoice over your enemies. It is that the king of Israel is dead. Was Saul really a great man of battle, a great man of prowess? Actually, 1 Samuel 17 shows that Saul was more content to let other people go and die and face the giant than he himself. Instead of having the courage to kill all the priests at Nob, he has a foreigner do it. But in his death, look at the language David uses about Saul. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath. Publish it not in the streets of Ashdod. Remember what they did with Saul's head and his armor. What did they do? They took it and did what with it? They put his body on the wall. They took his head and his armor and put it in the temples so that gods could rejoice over it. What did they do when they captured the ark? Sent it to the temple of Dagon the first time, and then when Dagon got whooped up on, they sent it to Gath. After Gath got whooped up on, they were going to send it to Ascalon. Those guys went out there and said, "You're not sending it here. Don't care where it's going, but it's not coming here." It's very smart people. Look, it doesn't take me very long to look at a hot pot. Didn't take them very long to look at something they don't want any business of. And remember the whole story with that. They contrived this whole thing of let's put it on a cart with 2 oxes, and we'll take their young away from them. And if it goes back, I mean, you couldn't get any more rigged than the Philistines did right there, and go straight into Israel. Publish it in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the circumcised exult. This is not a day, this is not an opportunity, this is not something for our enemies to rejoice over. They took the head, they took the armor, but they tried to take the bodies and nail it to the wall. And the men of, anybody remember? It's over in chapter 1. Jabesh Gilead came in the night, marched 12 miles in the middle of the night, and removed the body of Saul, Jonathan, and Saul's other son, and took it, burned it, and buried him. So the Philistines could not rejoice over the death of the king, over the death of the king's son, over the death of the other king's son, that the line of the king is still alive. You mountain of Gilboa, which is where the battle was fought, let there be no dew or rain upon you. So cursed is now the mountain, no fields its offerings. Why? For the shield of the mighty was defiled. This is language that you would use for men with whom you would have a great deal of respect for, is it not? But Saul is David's enemy. Saul is a man who pursued David with a vengeance. Remember, David had to flee into the service of the king of Gath. Quite puzzling language, is it not? Give it a few minutes, we'll get to it. The shield of Saul is not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty. doesn't mean that Saul was fat. Okay? People go, man, he's calling him fat. No, look. In those days, fat was a good thing. It meant strength. It meant blessing. It meant all those, it's kind of like when you eat barbecue, what's the best part? Yeah, of course. Get around a bunch of guys and anyhow, that's a rabbit. We won't chase it because my rabbit's up there underneath the stage, so I can't do that. Then he turns to Jonathan. The bow of Jonathan has not turned back. The sword of Saul has not returned empty. Did Saul and Jonathan take men out in battle? It was a pretty bloody war.
David did his 10,000.
Saul killed thousands, and in this battle, Saul and Jonathan were in the midst of heavy fighting. I guarantee that they did not die as cowards. See, notice what David is doing. These men did not die. Now, how did Saul die? Full of arrows, and then he fell upon what? His own sword. And David could have said, the coward falls upon his sword. His son looks like a porcupine before the Lord. Oh, how the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Now, if I said it that way, am I singing praises to Saul and Jonathan, or am I mocking them? Saul's sword, the sword of Saul has not returned empty. David's bow has not been turned back. From the blood of the back down. You daughters of Israel, weep over Saul. Odd, right? Was Saul a good king? Not really. He takes out priests and then goes and kills all the families of the priests at Nob. Not a good thing. You daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothe you in luxurious scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. Now this clearly, Israel is not an overly wealthy nation at this time. I don't think that all the women in Israel are running around in scarlet robes with jewels all over them. I don't think that's what David is meaning here. But he made them safe. And in so making them safe through trade, Israel began to prosper under Saul and began to do well. You'll see that when David becomes king, he subjugates everybody to as far north as what we would call modern-day Turkey and all the way over to Iran and all the way down into Egypt. Saul begins that process. David takes it and just runs like a juggernaut with it. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan lay slain on the high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love was more extraordinary, surpassing the love of the women. This is where they get the whole thing that they were homosexuals. Now, why would David make this line in here? Remember, go all the way back to where David and Jonathan made their pact together. And David is hiding, and Jonathan, they contrived this idea of shooting arrows, which really the range officer would have shut that range down when you're shooting arrows with a guy down range with you. But apparently they didn't have a range officer that day. And David would know if Saul was going to kill him by how far the arrow went and how far Jonathan sent the boy to go find it. Remember, Jonathan took off his what and gave it to David. Can you remember the items?
His armor, his sword, and his tunic.
His tunic. Symbolizing that they were what? Brothers. And people take this verse and try to... Yes. And they take this verse and try to pervert it, don't they? They take this verse and try to pervert it in such a way that they make something that what David is doing for Jonathan, what David is doing for Saul, and they make it just nasty. How the mighty have fallen.
This is a blood brothers type thing.
It is. Absolutely.
Which is a different, it says surpasses the love of women. But I have never been in battle, but men who have been in battle, and I would guess women who have been in battle, would tell you that those that were in battle with them are their brothers. In fact, that Band of Brothers was a very popular series.
And there's memes going around on Facebook, and guys say things like this, if they would let me, I would suit back up and go with my fellow brothers back in the war. And wives hear that, and they have a hard time understanding what the guy is saying. It's like, don't you want to be around me? No, I do. But there's also something forged in a combat zone that is unlike any other bond. I got friends that I probably would never be friends with being in a war zone than I ever would have being on the streets of anywhere else. And the closeness of that relationship down there, because you eat together, you live together, you go on patrol together, you're there together for 27 long months, because I stayed with the same battalion for both deployments. I grew up as a chaplain with this entire battalion that stood up like 3 months before I got there, and then like a year after I left the Army was stood down. So I was pretty much, for this longest time, the only chaplain that battalion ever had. And we grew together, and we went to war together, and we went to war together twice, and we got to have this relationship that is amazingly eerie, and yet has nothing to do with me wanting to sleep with any of them.
It's a different kind of closeness.
Yes. And so you have this here with Jonathan. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons have perished. It's amazing language. It is amazing language for a man who has been hunted and hounded by the individual he's writing about. Imagine if you got an email from Hillary Clinton talking up Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. You'd have thought she was drunk or liquored. You thought her cheese had totally off her cracker. Right? I'd like to tell you the virtues of my opponents, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. I find them da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's all positive. You would look at this and go, someone needs to lock that woman up. Well, I'm talking about this incident. Or let's just take Ted Cruz and Donald Trump telling everybody about the great virtues of Kasich and Sanders. We would look at those and go, this is nuts. This is craziness. They're enemies. Could you write this about an enemy?
Didn't Saul love David until they started that ditty?
I think that Saul had an affection for David, but Saul was always a man about himself, I think. Notice when they wanted to select him king, where did they find Saul? Hiding in the baggage carts. I don't want this job. If I get this job, I got to work. Might fail.
He was afraid of the giant on the other side.
Well, that was in 17. But this was early on. Yes, somebody said something.
The thing is, too, Saul knew that David was anointed. That would cut his son out of the kingship.
He did after time. He did know that Saul, but that was after. I would say he probably found that out probably a little bit later after the first attempt to kill David. Yes, did you say something? Yeah.
David was a man after God's own heart. And this is an example of it. And later on we have Jesus saying in the Sermon on the Mount, love is.
Well, yes. Yeah. And you have that whole component here.
I think David respected the office.
I think he had a great deal of respect for the office, but
We have some of that same kind of thing going on now, where it's very difficult for some people to respect the office of president. But the office itself still deserves respect. And I think David felt that.
Yep. Like I said, the guy that wrote my bad OER that caused me to be an on-select, every morning I had to see him. Every morning I saluted him. Every morning I called him sir. Why? Because his rank indicated a level of respect that he was to be afforded. I could not in good conscience or as a good godly man give a haphazard courtesy to it, regardless of whether or not he was a moral man, regardless of whether or not he was a man to be followed or not. He possessed the rank of a colonel in the United States Army. He deserved all the respect that rank itself demanded. Now, as an individual, since we are now both out of the Army, does he still deserve the respect as a child of God? Absolutely. But I don't have to salute him. I don't have to call him sir. I don't have to stand at the position of attention when he comes by or get out of my chair when he comes into the room. But when he held that rank, he possessed the authority that rank had and the respect that rank should be afforded. And a lot of times people miss that in life. Well, I don't respect the person, so I don't have to salute him. I don't respect the person, so I don't have to do... Now, this is the hardest thing for young soldiers. NCOs, am I right? It's the hardest thing for young soldiers to get a grip on. I don't understand why I have to salute this guy because I don't respect him. Doesn't matter whether or not you respect the guy or not. You respect the rank that he wears on his chest or sometimes on the tabs of his neck. Why? Because he's been afforded a courtesy you have not.
Well, I think if you don't respect them, then you have to lose a little respect for yourself.
Yes.
For not doing what is due.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the presidency. It doesn't matter who you voted for. You refer to him as President so or her, President so-and-so, or Mr. President, or I assume Mrs. President if that happens. But it doesn't matter if you like
It'd be Madam President. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you look at it and it's a sir thing, not because you respect the person, but because you have to respect that office.
Right. But look at what this language has here. It's not talking necessarily about the position Saul has. This is talking about Saul and Jonathan. So there's an element, while that is true, there's also the element of at the person level. David writes this about Saul, the man who tried to skewer him twice with a spear. See, the ethic is we break this down and we compartmentalize things and we go, well, I respect this. And I do this. Look, I respect the guy that I disliked for a while. I respected his rank as a colonel. But I guarantee you, if for 30 minutes rank could come off, I'd try to run him over with my car. Why? Because that dude wronged me. That dude wronged me. I have since gotten past that and recognized that while he may have wronged me, God will do more and take care of him, and I don't have to worry about it. So we kind of compartmentalize it, and you see how it carries over today in our culture. I do not like the current sitting president, but I have obeyed his orders. I do not like the current sitting president. I haven't liked other presidents. But they're still the president. And while I may dislike the current president, I certainly would not be for, if we ever impeached him, lynching him just because it make me feel good and I get a little giggle out of it. Why? Because at the core, he's still an individual, and we have an obligation. See, David shows to us a standard we rarely hold. He could have let that guy go and says, you know what? Thank you for killing Saul. I'm glad that it was a foreign pagan that did it. Give me the crown. Give me the guy. Just put those dudes on. I'm king of Israel. Pow. Thanks. Kills a foreigner for claiming. Now, the guy didn't kill Saul. Kills him for claiming he did. Man's dead. Why? You don't touch the Lord's anointed. You don't touch Saul. I didn't touch the Lord's anointed. Notice that every time he makes his plea, my Lord, what have I done to wrong you? I have done nothing to wrong you, but you have wronged me. Not necessarily a positional argument. It's a relationship, an argument of relationship. Can we say this? Could you write this about a bitter enemy? There's that Bible thing getting up in my business again. Why? Because it's easy to not write it. And then here's the thing. Could you write this and then command your family and all that know you to memorize this. What does this keep David from doing about Saul? Yeah, I wrote this lament for Saul to make myself feel good. Feel pretty good, but you know, that guy couldn't throw a spear for squat. Talk about an idiot. I mean, jeez. He'd tear up a steel ball. You know, he got killed in battle because he was a coward and fell on his sword. Keeps Israel from having a negative view of their first king. Keeps the people from looking at Saul. Because did Saul screw it all up? Yeah. Keeps Israel from taking a very negative view of Saul. David doesn't have to do this. David doesn't have to do this to Saul at all. He could have written it only about Jonathan. Jonathan was a good man. Said text in the Bible, you know, was it, one will hardly die for a good man? Man. You see this relationship, even in this poem, it's very poetic, but even in this poem, you see the love that David has for Saul, his position, himself, his line of service for Jonathan, for the relationship. You will see the faithfulness David has for Jonathan in the way he treats the remainder of Saul's household. Because next week, one of them will become a rival. Ooh, oh, I blew it. You won't come back next week. Yes, in chapter 2, I blew it again. One of them's a cripple. He takes good care of him. Could you write this of an enemy? Could I write this of an enemy? I'd have a hard time doing that. I could not write a lament for David Buckingham. I'd have a hard time. But I have constantly been praying for David Buckingham. Why? Because though he did me great in service, for me to ask for the Lord to gouge out his eyes with spiky little needles and get run over by a toy car just for giggles would be hopefully inappropriate.
But then you wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here. And look how the Lord worked all this out. David writes this of an enemy. Seriously, the guy was his enemy, but yet on another level, he loved him, he respected his position, and he respected what God had done. Could you do that?
And God had not undone it.
And he had not undone it, even though he made David, anointed David king. That's the amazing thing about the difference. Here, I think you see really the quintessential difference between Saul and David.
I think it was done in God's own time. If David would have gone ahead and run him through with the spear when he was asleep, people would not have accepted him as much as they did.
He would have been a usurper.
Yes.
Absolutely. And you see the reverse of this next week when Ishbosheth and someone else become a rival to David. Oh man, I messed it up again. You won't show up. I know. Anything else before we close out? Because I understand there's like cake and maybe punch over there for this guy. So, anything else? I mentioned cake and punch, all the questions. I got to do that. No, actually, though, I appreciate the comments. It makes this enjoyable at the evening times. We're doing more of a survey than we are doing straight preaching, and I kind of like doing surveys. So, questions? I think so. It's hard to hate someone and then write this. Yeah. I think you're right. And you picked on something that I really had kind of looked over, and I'm glad you brought that up. Like I said, it's easy to hate an individual. It doesn't take much to hate people. Okay? Trust me. The guy that pulls, you've heard my thing, pulls over, far left lane. If I could get to him, it's easy. It's hard to love people. Think about it. Those of you with kids, right? We're only good to them so they'll take care of us later on in life, right? I'm kidding. I love my kids greatly. I really do. But there are some days where I don't love them as much as I do other days. Because you're like, go away. Daddy's mad at you. It don't take much of my... No, I'm kidding. They're great girls. They are great girls. But if you have kids, do you not get your... I mean, seriously. Love is a difficult proposition. Parents, in the middle of your conversations with your, or husbands and wives, in the middle of your conversations with each other that are a little bit more, on, let's say, on the tense side, it's kind of hard to go, I love you with the love of all that is in me. No, if I could push your ears together, I'm going to see what's in there. Loving someone is intrinsically harder, great level of difficulty, than there is in hating an individual. David demonstrates the love he has for Saul and demonstrates the fact that while it was easy to have killed him, easy to have hated him, yet in this, he not only writes this psalm, or lamentation if you want, lamentation psalm, or however you want to phrase it. It's sorry, I'm about to chase a rabbit. Come back around. Whoop. This lamentation. But then he commands Israel to know it forever. It's an amazing thing. I don't know if I could ever do that. I don't know if I were David, or actually no, if I were David, I'd write exactly what David did. If David were me, I don't know if I could write this. I would like to think that I could. But that's hard. That requires mercy. That requires forgiveness. That requires grace. That requires not just respect, but also respect for who the man served, respect for who the man represented. Let's close out with a word of prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come before you. Heavenly Father, we ask that you be with each and every one of us here. Tonight's is hard. David sets a bar extremely high. A bar that I would one day like to say I live up to. It's hard. To love your enemy. Heavenly Father, be with us and the hardness of our heart. That when we look at individuals who do us wrong, that we love them and seek not our own revenge. That's hard. We ask for your grace and mercy on us. We ask, Heavenly Father, also that you bless this time of fellowship that follows afterwards and the food to the nourishment of our body. We ask for these things in your name we pray. Amen. All right. One more.